Okay, tonight is the 16th of August 2011. This is the fourth night. We're speaking on the Udana. Now we come to chapter 7, the minor section or minor chapter, Chula Vaga, 7.1. Patama Lakuntaka Badiya Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Sariputta, by a variety of means, was instructing, rousing, inspiring and gladdening the Venerable Bhaddiya, the dwarf, with talk on Dhamma. Then, while the Venerable Bhaddiya, the dwarf, was being instructed by the Venerable Sariputta with talk on Dhamma, his mind was freed from the asavas without grasping. The Lord saw that while the Venerable Bhaddiya, the dwarf, was being instructed by the Venerable Sariputta with talk on Dhamma, his mind was freed from the asavas without grasping. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: above, below, and everywhere released, one not observing I am this, has crossed the flood not crossed before, freed thus with no renewal of being. This Lakuntaka Bhaddiya, or Bhaddiya the dwarf, supposed to be the Arahant who is not nice to look at. He's like a dwarf, and in other ways also not nice to look at. But the Buddha says he has great psychic powers. So you can see here, it was Venerable Sariputta who helped him become enlightened. But we find the Mahayana books, they always put down Sariputta as without wisdom. And that is because when Devadatta split the Sangha, caused the schism of the Sangha, the Buddha asked Venerable Sariputta to go and inform all the people that this Devadatta has nothing to do with the Buddha anymore. Whatever he says and does, he does not represent the Buddha. So Venerable Sariputta went around telling the lay people. So this is one of the reasons. Seems like the Mahayana, they adopt some of the things that Devadatta practiced, like vegetarian practice and all that. Now 7.2. Dutiya Lakuntaka Bhaddiya Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Sariputta, by a variety of means, was instructing, rousing, inspiring and gladdening the Venerable Bhaddiya, the dwarf, with talk on Dhamma, much more since he considered him to be still a learner. The Lord saw the Venerable Sariputta instructing, rousing, inspiring and gladdening the Venerable Bhaddiya, the dwarf, with talk on Dhamma. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: He has cut the round, won the desireless, the dried up river flows no more. The severed round does not revolve. Just this is the end of suffering. The round means the round of rebirths. The river means a river of life. 7.3. Patama Satta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. At that time most people in Savatthi clung excessively to sensual pleasures. They lived greedy for, longing for, bound by, infatuated with, addicted to, and intoxicated by sensual pleasures. Now a number of monks, having put on their robes in the forenoon and taken their bowls and outer cloaks, entered Savatthi for alms food. Having walked in Savatthi for alms food and returned after the meal, they approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side and said, "Here in Savatthi, revered Sir, most people cling excessively to sensual pleasures. They live greedy for, longing for, bound by, infatuated with, addicted to, and intoxicated by sensual pleasures. Then on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Clinging to sense pleasures, to sensual ties, seeing in fetters nothing to be blamed, never will those tied down by fetters cross the flood so wide and great. That means they'll never cross over to Nibbana, because they're clinging to sensual pleasures, fettered by sensual pleasures. 7.4 Duttiya Satta Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion, most people in Savatthi clung to sensual pleasures. They lived greedy for, longing for, bound by, infatuated with, addicted to, and intoxicated by sensual pleasures. Now the Lord, having robed himself in the forenoon and taken his bowl and outer cloak, entered Savatthi for alms food. The Lord saw how most people in Savatthi were clinging to sensual pleasures and were greedy for sensual pleasures. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Blinded by sense pleasures, enmeshed in the net, covered by the cloak of craving, bound in the bondage of negligence, like fish in a fisherman's trap, they go to decay and death, as a suckling calf to its mother. All beings, we tend to follow our tendencies, and our tendency is to enjoy and shrink from suffering. 7.5 Para Lakuntaka Badiya Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Badiya the dwarf, following behind a number of monks, was approaching the Lord. The Lord saw from afar the Venerable Badiya the dwarf coming, following behind a number of monks, ugly, unsightly, deformed, and generally despised by the monks. On seeing him, he said to the monks, "Monks, do you see that monk coming, following behind a number of monks, ugly, unsightly, deformed, and generally despised by the monks?" And they said, "Yes, revered sir." And the Buddha said, "Monks, that monk is of great supernormal potency and power. It is not easy to find any attainment which that monk has not already attained. He has realized here and now, through his own direct knowledge, that unequal goal of the holy life, for the sake of which sons of good family rightly go forth from home to the homeless state, and entering into it, he abides in it." Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance. Faultless, with its white awning, the one-spoked chariot rolls. See him coming, trouble-free, the stream cut no more in bondage. So you see this Venerable Badiya, he has great supernormal psychic powers, whereas the Arahant who helped him to become enlightened, Venerable Sariputta himself does not have psychic power, but his disciple has great psychic power. So monks, when they become enlightened, because of past karma, some of them, they attain psychic power naturally. You know, the later books like the Mahayana books and the commentaries and the later books which the Hinayana monks follow, they talk about paramis, that to become enlightened, you got to develop the paramis. The Mahayanis talk about 6 paramis, the Hinayanis talk about 10 paramis. And you see somebody like this Badiya, he's ugly, unsightly, deformed, and despised by the other monks. So if you look at him, you think he got no parami. And yet he can become enlightened, fully enlightened. So enlightenment has nothing to do with paramis. The paramis were created later. 7.6 Tanha Sankaya Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Anyata Kondanya was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect and reviewing his liberation by the destruction of craving. The Lord saw the Venerable Anyata Kondanya sitting cross-legged, not far away, holding his body erect, and reviewing his liberation by the destruction of craving. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "For whom there is no root and soil, there are no leaves, how then creepers? Who can blame that heroic sage, free from every form of bondage? Even the Devas praise such a one. By Brahma too he is praised." So this simile of the plant has no root, no soil. So it's totally cut off. The basis of rebirth. Just like the tree cannot grow anymore. 7.7 Papanchakaya Sutta. Papancha is proliferation. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Lord was sitting reviewing his own abandonment of perceptions and concepts born of proliferation. Then the Lord, on realizing his own abandonment of perceptions and concepts born of proliferation, uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "The world with its devas does not despise that cravingless sage as he fares along, for whom there are no proliferations and stagnation, who has overcome the tether and bar." 7.8 Kachana Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Savatthi in the Jeta wood at Anathapindika's monastery. On that occasion the Venerable Mahakachana was sitting cross-legged not far from the Lord, holding his body erect, having mindfulness with regard to the body set up and well established within him. The Lord saw the Venerable Mahakachana sitting cross-legged not far away, holding his body erect, having mindfulness with regard to the body set up and well established within him. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "He for whom mindfulness of the body is always constantly established thus, if there had not been, there would not be for me. There will not be, and there will not be for me. If he dwells upon that in graded steps, in time he will pass beyond attachment." This one we went through this verse last night. 7.9 Upadana Sutta. Udapana Sutta, the well. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was journeying among the Malas together with a large sangha of monks, and came to the Brahmin village of the Malas called Tuna. The Brahmin householders who lived in Tuna heard: "The recluse Gotama, the Sakyan son who went forth from the Sakyan clan, has been journeying among the Malas together with a large sangha of monks, and has arrived at Tuna." They then filled the well to the brim with grass and chaff, thinking, "Don't let those shaven-headed recluses get water to drink." You see, they're so bad-hearted, they refused to allow the monks to use the well. Then the Lord stepped off the road, and going up to the foot of a certain tree, sat down on a seat prepared for him. Sitting there, the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda: "Come, Ananda, fetch me some water from that well." Thereupon the Venerable Ananda said to the Lord: "Just now, revered Sir, the Brahmin householders living in Tuna filled the well to the brim with grass and chaff, thinking, 'Don't let those shaven-headed recluses get water to drink.'" Then a second time the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda: "Come, Ananda, fetch me some water." And a second time the Venerable Ananda said to the Lord: "Just now, revered Sir, the Brahmin householders filled the well to the brim with grass and chaff." Then for a third time the Lord addressed the Venerable Ananda: "Come, Ananda, fetch me some water from that well." "Yes, revered Sir," the Venerable Ananda replied, and taking a bowl he went to the well. Now as the Venerable Ananda was approaching it, the well threw up all its grass and chaff from its mouth, and stood filled to the brim with pure, clean, clear water, as if it were overflowing. Then the Venerable Ananda thought, "It is indeed wonderful, it is indeed marvelous, the great supernormal potency and power of the Tathagata. As I was approaching this well, it threw up all that grass and chaff from its mouth, and now stands filled to the brim with pure, clean, clear water, as if it were overflowing. And taking some water in the bowl, he approached the Lord and said, "It is indeed wonderful, it is indeed marvelous, the great supernormal potency and power of the Tathagata. This well now stands filled to the brim with pure, clean, clear water, as if it were overflowing. Drink the water, Lord, drink the water, Sugata." Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "What use is there for a well if there is water everywhere? When craving's root is severed, what should one go about seeking?" So this one, either the Buddha used his psychic power to make all the dirt come out, or the Devas, they respect the Buddha so much, they perform the psychic power. 7.10 Udana Sutta. Thus have I heard. At one time the Lord was staying near Kosambi in the Gosita monastery. At that time the women's quarters in the royal park of King Udana had burned down, and 500 women, headed by Samavati, had died. Then a number of monks, having put on their robes in the forenoon and taken their bowls and outer cloaks, entered Kosambi for alms food. Having walked in Kosambi for alms food and returned after the meal, they approached the Lord, prostrated themselves, sat down to one side, and said to the Lord, "Revered Sir, the women's quarters in the royal park of King Udana have burned down, and 500 women headed by Samavati have died. What is the destiny, what is the future birth of those women lay followers?" And the Buddha said, "Monks, some of these women lay followers were stream enterers, some once returners, some never returners." That means Sotapanna, Sakadagamin, and Anagamin. Not fruitless was the death of any of those women lay followers. Then, on realizing its significance, the Lord uttered on that occasion this inspired utterance: "The world is held in bondage by delusion, and only appears to be capable to a fool. Held in bondage by clinging and wrapped up in darkness, it appears to be eternal, but for one who sees, there is nothing." This story about this Samavati dying in that fire, I think is also in the Dhammapada commentary.